Hey everyone, I am starting a new challenge. I'm going to be reading through all my Isaac Asimovs. Yes, the title of the video is Reading Every Asimov. That's a bit of a cheat. I'm not really reading every Asimov. That way lies madness. He wrote a bazillion non-fiction books. I'm not going to be reading those. I'm going to be reading basically all his sci-fi stuff, all his novels, and all his short stories. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, if you know me, you know I like to do things in chronological order, and so therefore, that's what I'm doing. But with one caveat, I'm not going and looking at individual short stories and going through those in chronological order. I'm just going through basically all his novels and collections in chronological order. So for example, the first novel he ever published was Pebble in the Sky, so that is the first one I will be reading. He wrote a lot of short stories before this was ever published back in the 30s and 40s, but they are subsequently collected in all sorts of collections, often multiple times. So why do it in chronological order? That is a good question. I think it's interesting to follow an author's journey as they write their material, seeing how they develop in their skills as an author. And I think it's even more interesting in Asimov's case because he started to bring together his various series. The Robot series and the Foundation series eventually kind of connect together. Back in the 30s and 40s when Asimov was having his first stuff published, it was in these pulp magazines. That was how the sci-fi authors wrote in those days. And often these first novels like Foundation and I, Robot are what are called fix-up novels. They're basically just a collection of short stories connected together, sometimes with a very thin connecting thread. And one of the nice things about Asimov in his short story collections is he often has a short blurb at the beginning of each one, just talking about how he got the idea or some comment about the time period when he was writing the story. And yes, that does mean I will be mixing series in and out because, for example, the second book I'll be reading is I, Robot, and obviously there is the Robot series, but then the Pebble in the Sky is his Galactic Empire series, and the third book is The Stars Like Dust, which continues that. And then even chronologically within those series, sometimes a novel will be set actually before it, like it's a prequel, but it was published after. I'm doing it in publication order. And so another example of that intermingling, the fifth book I'll be getting to is Foundation, and then I'll be reading a couple of the Foundation books, and then I'll be getting to The Currents of Space, which again is back to the Galactic Empire. I'll also be mixing in, I have the Lucky Star books in this amazing boxed set. This was something that he published under a pseudonym, and they're pretty short, so I'll be just slotting them in at the time where they were published. And again, I'll be going through all this stuff, and it's quite a while before you get back to some of the later Foundation works. So it's going to take me quite a while to get to those. Now, in terms of his other stuff, he did write a bit of fantasy. I do have like this one, Azazel, which is a bunch of short stories, fantasy stories basically. And then he wrote some mysteries, the Black Widower mysteries. If I have those, I'll read them. Like I have this casebook of the Black Widowers, so I will read that. Now, as I said, I'm not going to be reading his non-fiction works. I do have some, so I will read those. These are basically scientific essays that he wrote, collected into books. And then he did write a couple of autobiographies. I don't have the early ones. If I can get my hands on those, I'll read those. But this is the last one, which was published, I think, 2 years after he died, I, Asimov. So that's his autobiography. Really looking forward to that one. So how am I going to do this? Well, basically, as I said, I'm going to be reading through chronologically, and I'll be reading at least one book a quarter. If I read more than that, occasionally I may read more than one a quarter, like those juvenile stories. They're only 144 pages, so I'll probably do a couple of those each quarter at least. By my reckoning, there's about 80 books here, so if I did one a quarter, that would be 20 years. But there's so many other books I want to read, so, you know, I feel that that's manageable. And as I said, I'll probably maybe read one or two per quarter, so hopefully I'll get through these quicker than 20 years. I think Asimov doesn't get talked about quite as much as he should, considering how prolific he was and how much cool stuff he wrote. I really do enjoy Asimov. Sometimes it can be a bit dry, but I don't mind that, because the concepts and ideas that he has are usually enough to keep me engaged with his books, and certainly his short stories. So I hope you're going to find this interesting, as I will. I should actually tell you what I've already read. Well, I have read the first Foundation trilogy. I've read a bunch of his short stories. I've read I, Robot, but I haven't read any of the Galactic Empire. I haven't read the later Foundation stuff, but I can't remember there being an Asimov that I didn't like. So if you want to join me, you can. I'm going to be posting a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, detailing all the books in this list in the order that I'm going to be reading them. 1 1/4 is not too onerous. I hope you can join me if you've got access to these books. And my next video in this series will be about Pebble in the Sky. I hope to see you there. See ya.